Okay. So we come back to Europe. We're gonna come back to the U.S. You remember we did the Cold War generically, just what it was, and a few Cold War conflicts, and then we left Europe and the U.S. and we went and saw what was going on in the rest of the world during the Cold War, and we got very modern. Now we're gonna come back. We're gonna find out what's happening in the second half of the Cold War in Europe and the US. And then we're going to talk about the end of the Cold War in Europe and the US. And again, that's when we'll get very modern. So this is now the section we're going to say second half of the Cold War. And we're going to find out that World War II, after World War II, Western Europe is recovering nicely. When the Marshall Plan was loaning money to Western European countries that would take that money and rebuild. And the thing about rebuilding is that it's a massive challenge, but it's also a massive opportunity. It allows for you to kind of reimagine your society. It also creates a lot of jobs, rebuilding. So we're going to find that this is a moment of economic boom in Europe and the US, but we'll get there in our next bit. And we're going to start in France, and we're going to say that after World War II, they created a new government. One thing we know about France is that they're always kind of bouncing back and forth between new styles of government. And we're going to find that after World War II, the style of government that is created in France is going to stick, is going to be modified and reformed, but this is the one that is going to be lasting. Heck, in all of Western Europe, or even all of Western Europe, the styles of government that take over after World War II are largely the ones that are in place today. Really, around the world, our modern culture is a post-World War II culture, and a lot of our modern world was created after World War II. So France gets a government with a strong parliament and a weak president. Bottom line, it's a representative democracy where the people vote. The government was ineffective, and they went back to an old war hero, General Charles de Gaulle, to become leader of this new country. And we're going to see that he just like in French style, is going to step down, but then is going to make it return and come back. And he actually helped create a new constitution in 1958, where the president has more power, which really allows the government to be more effective. It's tough to get things done in a government where there isn't not a strong leader or one person who's ultra strong, but there needs to be an ability to get things done when things get stuck, right? If you're going to rely on purely parliamentary decisions, and it's not a parliamentary system, but it's a president, maybe a constitutional system where Congress has all the power. Sometimes things can just get stuck and not go anywhere. And it's nice to have the ability to have a president kind of just give things a nudge and get the ball rolling. And then oftentimes we see progress. Where sometimes in two-party systems with the president and the parliament, things will just get stuck and nothing will get done. They'll just be fighting all the time. And that's kind of where it was. So you see, he creates a new constitution, gets the president a little more powerful. He's able to start moving France forward. He wants France to become a military power again. They had just gotten beat up on by Germany. So he works to get France's first nuclear bomb, nuclear capabilities. And in 1960, France explodes its first nuclear bomb. And now we have the US the Soviet Union, and France. And around the same time, Britain, we will have 4 countries with nuclear weapons, which really serves as a deterrent to the Soviets because America was so far away and they were the only people in Europe with a nuclear bomb that when Britain and France get their nuclear bombs, we're going to see it makes the Soviets just kind of say, oh, well, I guess we're not the European powerhouse anymore, or the only one in Europe, say. They were still the more powerful. In 1962, he gives all France's African colonies independence, including Algeria, which was the last one to go. We discussed this because so many French lived there. France's economy was growing faster than almost any country in the world, including the United States. Again, this rebuilding effort. You're not only reimagining, but you're creating a bunch of jobs. And France is going to start to get a. Let me just finish this thought up. In 1968, there were student protests, and de Gaulle resigns. He's going to die within a year, but the guy he's a hero in France. After de Gaulle dies, in the 1970s, France's economy is going to slow down, and it's going to cause socialist parties to gain more power. Truth be told, France is more left-leaning than the major other European powers, specifically Britain and Germany, are more conservative. In Europe today, the 3 big powerhouses are Britain, France, and Germany. And yeah, all through the 70s, the socialists gain power, and in the 80s, the Socialist Party takes a majority of the seats in Parliament and is able to put a socialist in power. And France is going to adopt many socialist policies, including universal health care, which of course means every single French person gets health care in the 70s. Eventually, we're going to find that they adopt some, even further reaching left-leaning policies, including government ownership of some industries during certain points in time. The big industries, your oil or your coal or your mining. The utilities were going to come under government control, like the power companies and such. And France is just going to move a little more to the left. I mean, they have gotten to the place where they have things like, free childcare, free or very, very much reduced price universities. So when we look at the big 3, and that's really who we're going to be focusing on in this section, we're going to see that France is going to take a turn to the left in the 70s and stay more left than the other 2. Speaking of the big 3, West Germany, which will become Germany, of course, in the 90s. Spoiler alert. We know that West Germany was split up into 3 zones, the French, the British, and the US zones from the very beginning. From 1949 to 1963, West Germany was led by a guy named Konrad Adenauer. I don't know. This guy here. And from 63 to 69, it was led by Ludwig Erhard. And really, you got to understand, West Germany was Hitler's Germany, right? So Germany was bombed massively in World War II. And Germany had a ton of rebuilding to do, much more than France, who didn't really fight that hard. Remember, right? Hitler came in a few weeks later, he's in Paris. And, we surrender. In part because they fought so hard in World War I, and most of the war was fought on that border in France. So we understand. I'm not trying to say anything bad about the French. But Germany had even more rebuilding to do than France. And we're going to see that, unemployment was high at first in West Germany, up to 10%, which is really high, especially for Germany, for a rich Western industrialized nation. But look, over the next 10 years, unemployment is going to drop all the way down below 1%. That's unheard of. Our unemployment is never below 1%. 3% unemployment in America is like amazing if you can get it that low, right? I mean, anything under 5 is considered to be really good. We are currently at, well, because of the coronavirus, I think we're above. I think we're, I'm not even really sure. I think we're, probably in the 6 to 7% range. Before the coronavirus, we were in the threes, so it was great economic times. And most people hope that we get back below 5 soon, as things are now reopening. Thank goodness. Okay, I'm sorry, I digress. But yeah, this West, they call this the West German economic miracle, and yeah, it's largely funded by Marshall Plan funds, by U.S. money. But there are so many jobs to fill rebuilding Germany that we're going to find that the Germans need to look abroad. Okay, the Germans need to look to Italy, to Spain, to Greece, to Turkey. They start opening their doors and inviting people in. Please come and work and help us rebuild. And their economy explodes. To this day, I think it's pretty well known that of the big 3 European powerhouses, Germany's economy is the strongest. In 1969, Germany makes a move towards socialism, electing a social democratic style leader named Willy Brandt. Now, this is the second, well, this guy, social democrats, I want to focus on that phrase because social democrats are, in a modern American politics, they're Bernie Sanders style people, right? They don't want the government to like own businesses. But what they want to do is provide more services for people, right? So this is when we talk about universal health care, right? This is when we talk about free or reduced price college. This is when we talk about things like potentially more preschools, free pre-K, maybe even like, we said in France, they actually have free childcare for newborn moms if they want, as another service the government provides. Also, this means higher taxes, especially on the rich. So, I mean, even today, like if you look at some of these European countries that are social democracies, there aren't a lot of jobs, even the best jobs, other than business owners. So this is kind of a weird kind of minefield to navigate through, that make multi-million dollars, right? So the best paying jobs are like, yeah, you make a few $1 million a year, but there aren't going to be those jobs like, say, in America, where people are making 50 million, 100 million, like insane amounts of money that can exist in our country, where we don't have as high tax rate on some of the richest earners. So anyways, this is the social democrats, just really briefly trying to explain. And Willy Brandt does things like provide universal health care. He tries to provide more government services for the people, low price college, while raising taxes on, again, mostly the rich, but on everyone. Has to pay a little more taxes to get things like free healthcare that you would normally pay for. So it balances out sometimes, in theory. He also works to get more cooperation between the East and West. This is Willy Brandt. He says, look, I know you guys are super friendly with the Soviet Union and they're kind of controlling you, but let me extend a hand, and it's that hand, that extended hand, that makes people on the East say, it might be kind of cool to get back together with the West. And it doesn't start a movement, but it starts the ball rolling in what would 20 years later become the reunification of Germany. So Willy Brandt, he wins a Nobel Peace Prize. He's a well-respected German leader. And West Germany is quickly back on the path of success. Britain, the last of the big three. And after World War II, Great Britain was in major debt. Winston Churchill, the war leader, is quickly replaced by a leader from the Labour Party, which is really a social democratic party, okay? Same beliefs and views as the Social Democrats. Britain, though, is a leader in this period in pushing left-wing policies, maybe socialist policies, depending on who you ask. And in 1943, Great Britain passes universal health care. They pass um, unemployment, old age pensions, and universal health care. First major European country to do so. And this costs a lot of money. And Britain makes that choice, just like France. And they say, we're just giving up all of our old colonies. And with the money we used to spend to police and build roads and infrastructure and stuff in those old colonies, we're going to give everyone free healthcare. We're going to lower the cost of college. We're going to try and do more for our people. And it does take Britain out of the conversation about who is the most powerful country in the world. It's no longer Britain, and it may have been Britain for over 100 years. But they do more for their people. And remember, they are America's bestie. So they still have power by influencing America. We're going to see that through the 60s and 70s, Britain is still kind of a leader in pushing social policy. But in the late 70s, Britain's economy is starting to falter, and they elect a woman named Margaret Thatcher. Margaret Thatcher is going to bring Britain to the right, bring Britain to the more conservative side of politics, where it stays today. So again, when we talk about the big three countries, you're Britain, France, and Germany. France is to the left, Britain's to the right. Germany would be in the middle of those three, understanding that America is still right of all of those. Okay, America is more conservative. All three of those countries. America does not have universal health care. All three, of course, do. America doesn't provide as many benefits for their people. They have lower taxes on the rich, especially in corporations. But yeah, Margaret Thatcher, she's the first woman prime minister. She's a great, she pulls back on government benefits towards people and welfare programs. In 1946, they called themselves a welfare society. In 1946. And in 1949, she says, let's pull back on some of the welfare. We don't need to give so much to the people. Now, I would never mess with universal health care, but we're going to pull back on that. And we're going to try and, tighten things up a little bit, maybe expect people to work more for what they have, less benefits. And it works, and Britain's economy does really, really well in the 80s. She is a national hero in Britain, and she moved Britain to the right. As we described earlier, Britain is the most conservative of those three big European countries. After the war, one of the things that happens is that we're now on the last bit, this European Union. These countries wanted to find a way to make sure that they stick together in the future. And the best way to make sure that your country sticks together and works with another country is to tie yourselves together economically. Because if I depend on you and you depend on me, we're much less likely to fight each other. So, in 1957, France, Italy, West Germany, Belgium, and the Netherlands formed the EEC, the European Economic Community. Algeria was still part of France, but you can see France, West Germany, Belgium, the Netherlands, and Italy. And they do things like they say, well, let's have no tariffs when we trade with each other. Let's work together on joint mining ventures. So we'll all kind of chip in, and we'll buy the equipment we need, and we'll mine copper, and whatever other natural resources they want to mine. Let's try and have our banks, currency exchanges working together more. That it's an economic unity based on free trade and based on really cooperation. Um, you know, those tariffs, free trade. Um, Tariffs are when you tax stuff that is made in another country, which makes that other country stuff more expensive in your country. So your country doesn't want to buy it from the other country, but only from your country. Okay? So this policy of free trade, we're going to find out gains steam. It becomes a really important thing for the future, not just in Europe, but in the United States. And we'll get to the United States, but we talked about NAFTA when we talked about Mexico, free trade between America, Mexico, and Canada. This idea is not only starting here, but um, we're starting here actually. This is the very first, but this is the first time we see major powers doing this. In 19, oh, I wish I had written it down. Um, um, so I was able to get the numbers I wanted. In 1973, the EEC expands again, this time bringing in Great Britain, which was hugely important. Great Britain, of course, one of the big three powerhouse economies of Europe. They also bring in Ireland, Iceland, I think here actually, and Denmark. Also, Denmark's always been a powerhouse economy. And by 1986, the EEC had expanded and taken in Spain, Portugal, and Greece. Okay, um, and now by 1986, this Western European economic cooperation system was able to rival the powers, the economy of the United States. Together, they were able to form strength and have influence in world events economically that rival the United States. And since, of course, they were the US's great buddy, now we have the two really most powerful groups, right? The US and now the EEC, both pushing hard in the same direction economically. And we all know money makes the world go round here, folks. And it's gonna lead to the end of the Cold War. It's also going to lead to great economic success for any country that joins the EEC. So we're going to find Italy finally makes its way back up out of the old kind of mediocrity that it had been in for a while. Spain starts to find its way out. Ireland's going to find its way out. Little countries like Belgium and the Netherlands and Denmark find strength and unity. This EEC is so important for Western Europe. And we're going to find out that when Eastern Europe collapses, they're going to be brought in, making one massive European economic bloc, rivaling the United States. We're now the two biggest economies again, economic powerhouses in the world, are friends and are able to push economic policy to have a lot of control through money, not always through war. Although, of course, we know it also, especially the US, but war is used also.